My name is Spencer. Welcome to Breaking Points. These are all of the White House press secretaries since 1933. There were people filling this role before that, but 1933 was the first person to really have that title. And Jen Psaki over here just got a job at MSNBC. This has naturally raised some eyebrows.
Mouthpiece Jen Psaki.
Jen Psaki spent the last 14 months auditioning.
Some more than others. But however you feel about Psaki bombs, Psaki joining MSNBC is the latest example of a century-old revolving door tradition that the mainstream of the left and the right have generally accepted.
So congratulations to Jen Psaki.
This is Frances Folsom, and when she was a baby, her dad introduced her to his friend Grover Cleveland. When she was around 10 or 11, her dad passed away, and her dad's friend, Grover Cleveland, apparently became her unofficial guardian. Cleveland would obviously go on to become president. He was inaugurated in 1885, and then in 1886, 49-year-old Cleveland married 21-year-old Frances Folsom. So that's really weird, and the press was obviously interested in that, in addition to his being a candidate and president. So he didn't really like the press. The White House wasn't a regular news beat at the time. There was no press corps, but this was changing. There was one reporter who had started a regular column on the White House, and he would be stationed in front of the White House, so Cleveland would send out aides to give statements to him or anyone else rather than deal with them himself. McKinley took this a step further. He was more amenable to the press, and he liked hiring former news people anyway. Rather than just sending aides to talk to reporters, he was the first to set up an area in the White House where the press could actually work. The press was briefed twice a day by McKinley's first secretary, who had run a publishing company and was a news guy. News people knew how the news worked and the deadlines reporters were dealing with. So a White House press corps and a person to deal with it was becoming a thing. Eventually, the secretary who handles the press became known as the press secretary, and even though people had been filling this role for a number of years, it was essentially formalized with FDR's press secretary, Stephen Early. This might seem obvious, but let's just take a second to remember exactly what a presidential press secretary does. They speak on behalf of the president. They communicate the administration's agenda, and their aim is to do it in such a way that they get the best possible reception from the press. Sometimes they are super involved in the administration, like Jody Powell under Carter, who would advise the president, and sometimes they are outsiders, or at least begin as outsiders, like Ron Ziegler under Nixon, who told the press that the White House had no involvement in Watergate, not because he was lying, but because he probably actually didn't know. Ziegler was a mouthpiece whom Nixon eventually actually liked because of his willingness to withhold information from the press. But they're all mouthpieces who are paid to promote the administration. George Reedy under Lyndon Johnson apparently told the president that he thought Vietnam would be a disaster. But he didn't tell the press corps he thought that. No, he just eventually lost the trust of the president and at some point decided to leave without incident in order to pursue future career endeavors.
I found myself being cut off more and more. However, I also had a horror of being the kind of sorehead that I've seen walk out of the White House. And so I just quietly slipped out. Slipping out quietly that way, I had a chance to reorganize my thinking, to get some perspectives in the White House. It led to a couple of books which are now very standard in political science courses.
The following press secretary under Johnson, George Christian, delighted in telling the press no comment, but he was considered a more successful press secretary because he was closer to the president. It makes no sense. Political scientist Michael Towell defines the difference between a representative press secretary and a mouthpiece press secretary by the extent to which a president allows them to expound on the president's thoughts. But in either case, they are all there to sell an agenda. The other thing that binds almost all of them together, press secretaries, is their careers in journalism. FDR's press secretary came from the Associated Press. The next press secretary went on to be the editor of a paper. This guy, Charlie Ross, was a journalist before becoming Truman's press secretary. Longtime Washington correspondent, co-owner of a newspaper after he was press sec, vice president of ABC. He was considered a very successful press secretary too. They understand how the news works. They know how to craft media. It's all communications and political messaging anyway. Almost all of these people came from and or went to journalism. You know, the first person to go from TV to press secretary, Ron Nessen, who went to work for Ford. And since the cable news era, just about every press secretary has gone to one of the networks. Fox News, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, MSNBC, Newsmax, Fox, and finally, MSNBC. It's almost silly to point this out because it's so routine at this point. Psaki, however, has no journalism background. Most of her career she's spent working for corporate Democrats. Tom Vilsack, Joe Crowley, the DCCC, then she worked for Obama, taking a little time off to go work at Global Strategy Group, which is a corporate consulting firm famous for helping Amazon in their anti-union efforts in Long Island. That was after Psaki's time there, though. She went back to Obama, then to the State Department.
President Maduro last night went on the air and said that they'd arrested multiple people who were allegedly behind a coup that was backed by the United States. What is your response?
These latest accusations, like all previous such accusations, are ludicrous. As a matter of long-standing policy, the United States does not support political transitions by non-constitutional means.
Whoa. The U.S. has a long-standing practice of not promoting, what did you say? How long-standing is that?
During the Trump years, she was at CNN and at a firm called West Exec Advisors, where she did crisis communications for the Israeli facial recognition software company AnyVision. In 2020, she joined Biden, and now we are here. Her entire career is communicating the agendas of the officials for whom she's worked. Did she believe in all the work she did? I mean, I can't imagine she believed in all of it, but she worked in government and corporate firms for a long time, which means she built a lot of trust and favorability among powerful people. I mean, the entire career she is coming from is antithetical to the job of journalism. How could she ever be trusted to be authentic when she spent so much time simply being a mouthpiece? That is the job. Why would we expect her to be adversarial with officials and former colleagues in roles that she might not even really believe necessitate adversarial relationships? Now, obviously, none of this makes her special, though. She's simply the latest iteration of government comms person to transition to the probably much easier job of pundit and newscaster, and better paid. But this is, I think, what people are feeling when someone from an opposing political party makes this jump, i.e., how could this person ever be a journalist when their last job involved manipulating information and obfuscating and defending their bosses from journalists? And even though these networks are obviously in the habit of hiring people of a certain political alignment, hiring such a high-level official makes it feel like they're not even pretending anymore. But it doesn't matter to the networks because news always comes second to ratings. Nicole Wallace, who herself came from the Bush administration, said about Psaki, "She's already got a bond with our viewers. She's got a huge fan base, and we're lucky to have that here." She's never worked in journalism. She's never broken a story, but she has a fan base, and that's quite good enough. And interestingly, her fans probably know her partly for jousting with right-wing news outlets and Peter Doocy of Fox in particular. Similarly, fans of McEnany probably enjoyed her jousting with more liberal outlets, and in this way, people allow themselves to map the adversarial qualities they might expect in a journalist onto these press secretaries. So the inherent conflict of a mouthpiece moving into journalism is only going to be visible from the opposite side. So yeah, the revolving door is always turning. Pundits and political comms people are in constant audition for each other's gigs to the point that it's almost silly to point out one person going off to a network. And it's been that way for a really long time. And the rot in corporate media is so deep that for some of the highest profile news gigs, a career as a paid spokesperson is as much of a qualification as an actual career in journalism. But that will do it for me. Here is an AI-generated image of a press secretary if they were a terrified robot. I'm Spencer Snyder. If you found this video interesting, make sure you are subscribed to Breaking Points. You can also check out my YouTube channel where I talk all about media and politics and other interesting things. Link in description. Liking and sharing always helps. Thank you so much to Breaking Points. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.